Good evening, darlings and deviants. My name is Lucy, and I'm just a little loony. I was digging through some ancient tomes here in this library of legends, and I realized that there's a lot of powerful spells throughout the history of this game, and sometimes it's easy to overlook some or forget where they came from. So, I decided that I'm going to dig through every single set in this game and discover the origins of some of the best cards that have ever seen the light of day. I'll be looking through the lens of Commander because, frankly, it's the most popular format, and if I tried looking at it in any other way through any of the other formats, my head would explode. And let's do it in a top 10 list format to boost engagement. Don't worry, I don't plan on becoming a top 10 channel or anything, it just seems to make the most sense for this kind of stuff. So, without further ado, it's showtime! In the beginning, there was nothing. The world was devoid of magic, and from that void came the Gathering. Specifically, Magic the Gathering was released. The original Alpha, Beta, and Unlimited sets were the beginning of one of the greatest games of all time, and some of the most powerful cards in the entire game came from this original set. This game is older than I am, but looking at these cards fills me with a sense of nostalgia. Not of specifically opening these cards, but of hearing the tales of their power, of watching retellings of these epic battles, and the art just screams 90s fantasy. And as this is the first set in the game, this is where we'll begin. First off, I have some honorable mentions. Clone, Fog, and Prodigal Sorcerer. Clone is a 0/0 creature for 3 and a blue, which... Yeah, I'm not reading that. We're gonna take a look at the Oracle text. Clone can basically do what it says on the tin. It enters play as a copy of a creature of your choice. Notably, this doesn't target, so your opponent's big scary thing with hexproof and shroud, now you have one too. Fog is 1 green mana for an instant, which lets you stop all combat damage for the turn, and Prodigal Sorcerer, or Tim as his friends call him, is a 1/1 creature for 2 and a blue that can tap and deal 1 damage to any target. These are all iconic effects in Magic and have been so powerful as to become the go-to name for effects that are similar to them. Clones, Fogs, okay, nobody calls them Tims, but Tim is one of those classic spells. I couldn't leave him off the list. Starting the list proper at number 10, we have Red Elemental Blast. For 1 red mana, you can counter a blue spell or destroy a blue permanent at instant speed. Its counterpart is Blue Elemental Blast, which does the same thing, but it's blue and deals with red cards. But it's not on the list, because blue has literal factual counterspell and red doesn't. Seeing the look on a blue mage's face as you counter their counter with a card from the very inception of the game? Decadent. Next up at number 9 is Lightning Bolt. For 1 red, you get an instant that deals 3 damage to any target. Of all the cards that still see play today, Lightning Bolt is the easiest for a new player to understand, in my opinion at least. For 1 mana, you deal 3 damage. To anything, plain and simple. People honestly don't run enough Lightning Bolt in Commander. Try it out in your decks, trust me. You'd be surprised how many Commanders have 3 or less toughness. Number 8 is a card that I never really see in Commander, but it's a very interesting spell. It's Berserk. For 1 green mana, you get an instant that can only be cast before combat damage is dealt. However, once it is cast, you effectively double a creature's power and give it trample, with the downside that it gets destroyed at the end of your turn. This card is really interesting for green decks, as it can give your beefy creatures more power while also being able to destroy your opponent's attacking creatures while pumping them up to deal more damage. Creature removal in green on its own, without having like your own big beefy threat, is rare, and the versatility here is hard to find. Number 7 is a pair of cards. Because it's my list, I have Looney in the name, and so I make the rules that I then get to go and break. The pair in question is Nevinral's Disc and Wrath of God. The Disc is 4 mana for an artifact that comes into play tapped. However, once you can untap, you can tap it and pay 1 mana to destroy all artifacts, enchantments, and creatures on the battlefield. Wrath of God, in comparison, is 2 white for a sorcery that destroys all creatures and they can't be regenerated. These are two board wipe effects with their own uses. The disc blows up more things, but they could be regenerated. Wrath of God can only be used in white decks, but it's faster, blows up creatures that can't be regenerated. Your pick here. If I had to choose between the two, I'd have to pick Wrath of God. What can I say? They don't call board wipes discs nowadays, after all. These are both wonderful cards in their own right, however, so choose whichever one is more suitable for the deck at hand. Number 6 is Wheel of Fortune, another one of those cards that's at the top of its class and sets a precedent for all cards in the future. For 2 and a red, you get a sorcery which makes each player discard their hand and draw 7 new cards. Forgoing all of the cool combos you can do with this and cards that stop your opponent from drawing 7 cards in red just isn't something you see anymore without some weird caveat or downside. And have you ever wheeled after someone tutors up their perfect combo? Just fantastic. Number 5 is Birds of Paradise. For 1 green mana, you get a 0/1 creature with flying that can tap to add 1 mana of any color. It's wonderful mana fixing and one of the best ramp creatures in the entire game. There's always a reason you gotta bolt the bird. Number 4 is Copy Artifact. This is an enchantment for 1 and a blue that comes into play in, well, copies an artifact, except it's also an enchantment. Kinda does what it says on the tin. Back when the game first came out, this card was fine. There was plenty of mana ramp, there was plenty of moxes, there was plenty of funny stuff to go around to copy. But considering how many amazing artifacts came out since this game has progressed, this card gets better and better every set, it seems like. Number 3 is Mana Vault. For 1 mana, you get an artifact that taps for 3 mana. However, it doesn't untap at the beginning of your turn, and you can pay 4 mana to untap it at the beginning of your upkeep. It's fast mana, plain and simple, but its true power requires you to have some form of untapping shenanigans to really pull it forward. That, and considering the number 1 spot on this list, I just think this one is a bit less generally powerful. Number 2 is Demonic Tutor. For 1 and a black, you get a sorcery that lets you take any card in your deck and puts it right into your hand, and then you shuffle your library. Again, another titular card. This one is so good because it basically adds an extra copy of your best card in any situation to your deck. Those coastal wizards have spent years trying to balance the effects of this, between making it cost life, putting the card on top, making it cost twice as much, or more. But in its original form, it's the coolest, simplest, and arguably most powerful one of them all. Finally, at number 1, it's Soul Ring. You all know it. You all have varying opinions about it. It's one of the most iconic cards in both Magic and the Commander format, and it's been here since the beginning of the game. After all, it kind of embodies how that format... Finally, at number 1, it's Soul Ring. You all know it. You all have varying opinions about it. It's been here since the very beginning of the game, and it's one of the most iconic cards in both Magic and the Commander format. After all, it kind of embodies how this format of ours is different than traditional Magic. For 1 mana, you get an artifact that taps for 2. Efficient, simple, easy. But why it's banned in Legacy, restricted in Vintage, and A-OK in Commander? It's simple. If you play a Soul Ring on turn 1, and it's rocketing you forward in a 1v1 game, only one person can really do anything about that or interact with you. However, in a game with 4 more players, those other players may be able to counter you or attack you or just all gang up on you. That's why I suggested in my Tools of the Tirade video on colorless mana ramp that you hold on to your Soul Ring and not run it out on turn 1. Don't get into the kitchen unless you can stand the heat. And there's one for the books. Some of the best cards from the very first set of the game. But maybe you disagree with me. Maybe you think another card should have gone higher, or you're yelling at me that I didn't put Shivan Dragon anywhere on the list. Please direct your virulent rage or absolute adulation into the comments below. And hey, don't forget to drop me a like and subscribe. While I may be able to planeswalk, this forbidden magic of the algorithm is foreign to me, so help me out a bit. The show's over for now, and until next time, au revoir.